And speaking of Ron DeSantis, my guest this evening is someone that I'll introduce in just a moment. But first, I'd like for you to take a look at this video.
Welcome to DeSantistan, a radical and oppressive right-wing dystopia that undermines democracy, vindictively punishes political opponents, and cruelly bullies vulnerable citizens. It's ruled by Little Dick Ron DeSantis, which is short for Little Dictator.
I am standing in your way.
DeSantis and his allies have brought an ugly cloud of darkness to the Sunshine State. He has exploited wedge issues and pitted Floridians against each other to further his political ambitions.
Instead of focusing on issues that Floridians actually care about, Ron DeSantis and the Republican Party are instead waging this culture war with our education system.
I am not backing down 1 inch.
DeSantis' reign has been a complete and utter failure. To enact his agenda, DeSantis hides behind the smokescreen of protecting the youth, yet he has abandoned the state's most vulnerable, at-risk, and desperate children.
4 different families accuse workers within Florida's foster care system of fabricating evidence, hiding and withholding key information, and ignoring state and federal family laws to divert children away from biological family members and place them with system-connected strangers.
18 more families have now joined the suit.
People hired to keep local children safe are quitting at an alarming rate.
The sheriff now calling the state's child welfare system broken, its group homes designed to care for kids in need incapable of handling kids. But it's also a system that has for years been overloaded, underfunded, and under-resourced, insiders say.
The governor has fomented bitterness and divisiveness to distract from his disastrous public policies.
Governor, Black history is American history, and you are on the wrong side of history.
And we are going to make sure we stand up to the left.
Under Little Dick Ron, Florida has become unaffordable.
South Florida's Tri-County area leads the country with rents 18% higher than it should be.
A COVID death trap.
You do not have to wear those masks. I mean, please take it off. Honestly.
He took away my authority. He put my child at risk.
Case data incomplete or inaccurate. COVID deaths reported late or not at all. And contact tracing simply never done.
An educational abyss.
I like getting books from our library, which we can't do right now.
They've come for teachers over masks. They've come for teachers over books. Teachers have been called groomers.
We are all scared because if we have a governor who doesn't value freedom, then what does he value?
And a citadel of censorship.
20 of her books have been removed by officials in Martin County schools.
It is not fine for you to make a decision for everyone else's child. And that is really what's at heart here.
6th grader Jonas Walter fears one of his favorite books may be banned from the classroom.
I think what the legislation is doing is trying to stoke fear that things are happening in the classroom that aren't really happening.
As well as a hotbed of hate. It's no coincidence that under his leadership, neo-Nazis have flourished. They've been emboldened and regularly disseminate literature and parade across the state while the Florida governor remains silent on their swastikas. No one is safe in Florida unless they bow down to the authority of the state.
There's a new sheriff in town, and that's just the way it's going to be.
If you want to know who Ron DeSantis really is.
Little Dick Ron is a strange hybrid of a committed fascist and a communist tyrant. From the fascist right, he scapegoats minorities, purges libraries, forces women to give birth, and indoctrinates school children with a sectarian agenda.
Make America great again. Build the wall. Then Mr. Trump said, "You're fired."
All you're doing is shrinking these kids' worlds and making them ill-prepared for reality.
And that's the hypocrisy of this.
From the totalitarian Stalinist wing, DeSantis demands the business community adhere to his worldview or face severe consequences.
I don't think Ron DeSantis is a conservative based on his actions towards Disney. If you express disagreement in this country, the government is allowed to punish you.
He is a demagogue, a dangerous demagogue.
So if you look at this whole special district, Walt Disney Corporation obviously owns a lot of it, but the district owns other land. What should we do with this land? Maybe you need another state prison. Who knows?
He wants to become president of the United States and export his ignorance and extremism to the rest of America. We are a group of deeply concerned citizens committed to ensuring this Orwellian nightmare never occurs.
Wow, Oklahoma Democrats, does that sound familiar to you? It certainly should, because the governor of this state is clearly enamored with Ron DeSantis and is trying to co-opt everything from the man's playbook. But we're going to get into this deeper now because my guest this evening was the one you just saw. He has been on this program a number of times discussing urgent issues of importance, not just to Oklahoma Democrats, but to Americans. He is truly one courageous man and someone that I am proud to call my friend. He joins us this evening, and I'm pleased to welcome back to the Hamilton Report, Wayne Besen. Wayne, good evening, my friend.
Good evening. It's great to be on. Thank you so much.
It is always such a pleasure to have you with us because you are a really smart man. And before we jump into this, I just want to encourage our audience tonight to please post your questions and comments as we go through this evening so that we can address those in real time. I think that that's really important. We have someone with this kind of knowledge base and has worked so hard in this effort already. So, Wayne, what is it that just moved you to the point of really creating not just a new website, but creating a whole new environment for people to look at the dangers that Ron DeSantis poses to America?
Well, as Floridians, and I also live in Florida, as well as Medellin, Floridians, we know the price of underestimating Ron DeSantis. And we have an urgent message for the nation as he announces for president. Take this threat seriously. If given the opportunity, Ron DeSantis will export his arrogance, ignorance, and extremism to the rest of the country. And we must ensure that this Orwellian nightmare never occurs, because those of us from Florida have seen firsthand who he is and what he is. And you mentioned that Ron DeSantis is exporting to other states, and they're taking a page from his playbook. But who's Ron DeSantis copying? And that's Viktor Orban from Hungary. That is his role model. So we've, in the past, we've heard of Reagan conservatives, and then we even had, God forbid, the MAGA Trump conservatives. But Ron DeSantis comes from the Viktor Orban wing of the Republican Party, and all of us should take pause because this is the most dictatorial, authoritarian country in all of Europe.
Yesterday, he was quoted as saying that he wants to make America Florida again. Well, look, after everything that we've been seeing come out of Florida, that's not a place that I want this country to look like. How does he think that that's going to resonate with people around the country, Wayne?
Well, Florida isn't America anymore. It resembles something more like Hungary with Viktor Orban. I think that, and we make a point of saying this, he takes the worst of both the Stalinist wing, the way he attacks business and dictates to them, and says, you're going to do exactly what I say. You're going to parrot the state line, and we're going to punish you, as we saw him do with Disney as well. We're going to build a prison, for example, on Disney property. And from the far right, he takes the worst elements in terms of censorship, this draconian abortion at 6 weeks, his attacks on LGBTQ people, his rampant racism, and attacks on being, quote, woke, which means that we simply are trying to be enlightened and not keep young people from education. We promote education, not ignorance. We promote where people can actually go and know about the world, because I think we're going to see a huge brain drain in Florida when it comes to education, and not just with students who decide not to study there, but a lot of teachers are saying, I've had enough. I can't teach here anymore. And so we're going to see some of these systems in Florida collapse because of what DeSantis has done. It's not going to be apparent right away, but we're seeing the beginnings of it. And Dwayne Wade was a perfect example, my favorite basketball player of all time from the Miami Heat. He has a trans daughter, and this is the biggest star, the most beloved person in all of Florida almost, and he moved out to protect his family. And if Florida is no longer good enough for Dwayne Wade, who is it safe for then? Nobody. Ron DeSantis is an extremist. Yeah, but he's an extremist who's out of step with public opinion. He is a narcissist who is a stage horse and a showboat who is completely focused on culture wars at the expense of the state. He doesn't care about solutions. He cares about stirring the pot. And that is what we have been have had to deal with in Florida. And I think it's going to catch up to him at some point. But people should take this man seriously and do everything in their power to make sure that the governorship of Florida, Tallahassee, is the end of his career rather than the beginning.
I love that approach. You know, I have to tell you, when I read this morning about someone pulling up to an ATM machine and taking longer than the guy behind them thought they should be taking, the guy gets out of his car and pulls a semi-automatic handgun on the man for taking too long at the ATM. These Florida man headlines were funny at one point, but now they're quite frightening. The NAACP yesterday issued a travel warning to people of color not to go to Florida because it's not safe.
It's not the first warning. Equality Florida, the LGBTQ organization, they issued a call. We had an immigrants' rights group do the same thing, say it's not safe for immigrants. And you mentioned the gun issue. Little Dick Ron is transforming Florida into the Wild West. He is recklessly letting gun stores hand out firearms like candy and Pez dispensers. And the state isn't safe for anyone. At any time, anyone can be a victim of random gun violence. It's a scary place under Ron DeSantis. In Florida, they just passed a new law that allows people to carry concealed guns without a permit or training. It's crazy. We've seen airports rampant with guns. The Transportation Security Administration reported a record number of guns that were intercepted at Florida airports last year. The state reported, get this, a 28% jump from any previous year and includes records set at 14 individual airports. Routine, and you just mentioned this, routine disagreements among citizens over things like parking spaces now degenerate from words to wielding weapons. Florida's famous spring break has gone from fun to fatal, with gunshots piercing dance music enjoyed by revelers. Schools are a disaster. They're no longer free from gun violence, with students smuggling in the glut of guns in the state. And of course, we all know about some of the massacres, such as in Parkland, that school shooting a few years ago, and the Pulse nightclub shooting. So Florida has been dangerous for quite some time. This is going to make it worse. It's going to be out of control, and people are going to start saying, you know what? I don't think I feel safe in Florida. We have European countries saying, I don't think Florida is safe. People are afraid, and for good reason. And I don't see any light at the end of this tunnel as long as Ron DeSantis is governor of Florida.
I have to tell you, not only if I were a father, not only would I not want my kids to go there for spring break, I'm not comfortable traveling there as a gay man. And that's a shame because some of the most beautiful beaches in this country are in Florida. But to me, it's not worth a vacation to be in fear of my life every day that I'm away from home.
Yeah, and it's been interesting because Florida's always had some very conservative, scary areas, but it was kept in its own bubble. And there have been places that were incredible international destinations, very sophisticated places like South Beach, Fort Lauderdale, Tampa, Orlando, and people would come from all around the world to go there. But right now, the right wing of Florida is not content to live and let live. They want to, quote, own the libs. They want to dominate. They want to go into places that are tolerant and have, quite frankly, been the economic engine of Florida. The reason people know about it, because to be blunt, they have beaches in Alabama too that are nice, but people aren't going there from all over the world. They're going to Florida because of South Beach, of the glamour, the excitement that has come from that state. And Ron DeSantis is going to strangle the economic golden goose that has made Florida so wealthy in recent years. And it's a shame because, as you said, our beaches are amazing.
And so, okay, we've talked about guns. We've talked about the dilution of education. We've talked about the harm against women and minorities. But what you haven't mentioned, I mean, I suppose broad brush with the LGBTQ community, when he suggested and then put into force that state employees would go into the homes of transgender kids and have the authority to take them out of their homes. Now, there is nothing Christian about that. There's nothing moral about that. It's wrong on every level. It's as if he thinks he owns the children of Florida.
Well, it's a form of kidnapping, to be quite blunt. I mean, you have kids in loving homes. Actually, these parents that they cannot do what is best for them with the advice of their physician. So they go to a doctor says, this is what the American Medical Association says we should do. This is what the American Academy of Pediatrics says we should do. And Ron DeSantis has demanded by law that you have to do the opposite of best medical practice. And speaking of that, he just passed another law with his rubber stamp Politburo that said that doctors don't have to treat people that they don't like. For example, LGBTQ people, because he made exceptions for other minority groups. Why would he leave LGBTQ people out? It's very clear that he wants doctors to say, I don't want to treat you because I don't like who you are. I mean, for one thing, what kind of a doctor would do that? I personally think any doctor who does that is violating the Hippocratic Oath and should have their license permanently stripped. If you can't treat all people, you need to get a new job.
Don't you see this as a form of genocide, a kind of cleansing of the races? Because if he gets rid of everyone that he doesn't like, he's going to be left with a bunch of old white people in Florida.
That's the goal. His educational program is very racist. We saw what he did with African-American AP studies. He said, we're not going to teach the truth. We're going to make sure textbooks get rid of any mention of Black Lives Matter. He said that we're going to distort history. We can't even talk about things like Rosa Parks. We're raising the next generation of Florida man. I can tell you that. He has, we've had complaint. We have something called woke busters, which are these ignorant yahoos that under the guise of parents' rights that scour libraries looking for anything to be offended by, which is almost always something written by a racial minority or an LGBTQ person, and censoring it, making sure people don't have access to it. Think about that, a roving mob of so-called woke busters cleansing the shelves to make sure our kids are stupid. And what's the result? Well, you have teacher in trouble with over a David statue. Like, that's offensive. Oh my God, it's new. This is a masterpiece. And when David statue cannot be shown in a Florida school, you're really talking about policing ignorance and ensuring that these young people cannot cope with the real world and will not be able to compete for jobs when they graduate eventually. They simply will not have the skills and the critical reasoning and thinking skills to compete with smart people from other places. You have a situation where a teacher just showed an animated movie with a character who's biracial and LGBTQ. And that teacher is now under investigation. What is this? North Korea? What is this? Russia?
Another student. G-rated movie. That was a G-rated movie, Wayne. I mean,
yeah, it was. I think it was PG, but it was something that was clearly within the bounds of being shown to the age group, and there was nothing objectionable about it unless you object to the very existence of LGBTQ people, and that is what we are seeing here. They are deliberately conflating the sexuality with existence. So they're making it uncomfortable for, say, a young gay person to mention they have gay parents. Their very existence is conflated with sexualizing. And there's nothing inherently more sexual about the existence of gay parents than straight parents. But that is their goal. And that is the strategy, to make anything LGBTQ dirty and ugly and something to be whispered about in the closet. And I say that when they say, don't say gay, I say you say it twice as loud. When they have censorship, you ignore it. When they say, when Ron DeSantis tells you what to think or what to wear, ignore him and deliberately have direct action and resistance to this. We cannot lay down. We cannot sit there and take it. We must fight like hell to make sure that Ron DeSantis doesn't destroy Florida and, God forbid, the rest of the country.
Let's go all the way to that extreme. This is an earnest prayer on my part that it would never happen, but if he should become the next president of the United States, what hope could we possibly have for this country?
I think the only hope is to get a passport and that they deliver them quickly so you can move. I think that's the best bet. Or, I mean, this country, just like if Donald Trump gets reelected, it will end as we know it. Democracy is hanging by a thread. We were very lucky. January 6th didn't succeed. We were very lucky to get a president like Joe Biden to try to fix this country. And it's not just for domestic reasons. Ron DeSantis was in bed with Les Parnas, with the guy who was funneling Russian oligarch money to politicians. We found that out today. I wonder why Ron DeSantis' initial position on Ukraine was pro-Russia. He was getting money funneled from Russia. And so both Ron DeSantis and Donald Trump threatened to destroy NATO. They both clearly don't care for it, and they're on the side of Vladimir Putin. And imagine if Vladimir Putin, they just hand Ukraine over to Russia. That would also, I think, encourage China on Taiwan, that the United States won't do anything. So this has real implications beyond domestic policy. This could really, whether Ron DeSantis or Donald Trump gets elected, put a monkey wrench in the entire free world.
I read today, it was either the Washington Post or the New York Times, but European leaders are very concerned about the 2024 election because they were beyond skeptical of Trump. And then it grew to disdain and then absolute hatred for the leadership of this country. And the Republicans are holding the world's economy hostage over this debt ceiling nonsense. So if you have one of these radical fools sitting in the Oval Office, we would have no support anywhere in the world. It's just that simple.
Well, that's true, but I think people need to realize this isn't Gerald Ford's Republican Party. It's not even Reagan's, who was bad enough. This is a white nationalist party. This is a religiously extreme party, not the regular Christians that we know that preach love and the actual word of Jesus, but those who believe that they should dominate people and use religion as a sword rather than a shield to help people. And what they want to do is destabilize this country because they don't have popular opinion on their side in most of America. So the only way people like a Marjorie Taylor Greene and a Matt Gaetz and a Donald Trump and all these other right-wing nuts can gain real power, other than the gerrymandering and the fact they did take over the Supreme Court, is through destabilizing this country. So they take every opportunity they can to vandalize our institutions so people give up on them. They give up on politics and allows a radical group like that to be ushered into power, claiming that they have all the answers. So they don't want solutions. They want problems. When things are bad, they're happy. So when people say, oh, they won't, they're gonna cave on the debt ceiling, not necessarily, because from their point of view, the more disastrous things get, the worse things get, the better it is for them and their chances of achieving raw power in this country.
Let me ask you a question. Well, first of all, we should let our audience know that Little Dick Ron goes live tomorrow. We're here tonight talking about it because it does go live tomorrow. And that stands for Little Dictator Ron, to be clear with our audience. Now, this is, from all accounts, going to be a tremendous asset for thinking people when it comes to who we're going to look at for the election next year. Are you concerned in any way that your work in this area is going to be a boost to 45?
I think we need to worry about one problem at a time, and that is getting rid of Ron DeSantis. I think that he's potentially more electable than Donald Trump. Everybody knows who Donald Trump is. They have their opinions set on him. So we need to get rid of Ron DeSantis first. I think that we have a much better chance against Trump. He lost his reelection. Hillary had more of the popular vote. Biden beat him. Then you had the two midterm elections. Donald Trump is kind of electoral poison in a way. In terms of both candidates and for the Democrats in general, the way we're going to beat Republicans is abortion, abortion, abortion. My I think our motto should be abort the GOP. That is the one place where they are so out of step with public opinion. We have seen every single place from Kansas to Michigan in particular, where we took over all of the government there, that this issue really, especially in the suburbs, gets people out to vote. We have seen that Ron DeSantis and his 6-week abortion ban that he just signed is something that he's running away with. He even went to Jerry Falwell's Liberty University and wouldn't talk about this. He signed this at 11 o'clock at night. I guess he thinking nobody would notice. I guess he didn't realize the internet exists and that we'd be able to follow this. Listen, the New York Times wrote something yesterday, Scott. It said on the trail, his remarks about the ban are usually limited to a single line in his roughly 45-minute stump speech. He's running from this. They're all terrified of this issue, and I think that's going to sink them all. So I think we need to pound that issue home over and over and over again, because it's a really big dividing line between the two parties.
I read a statistic. This is a couple of months ago, so it may have changed slightly. But 68% of women in Florida detest the man. They would not vote for him again for governor, and most certainly wouldn't if he were to run for president. If people in your own state hate you that much, why are you considering this level of run?
He's like Trump. People either love him or hate him. The more people learn about him, though, I think we saw an erosion of his numbers, but it's still very early. Remember, Joe Biden was losing until South Carolina last year. He was so I wouldn't count this guy out yet. In fact, I think he's got better than even odds. I think that's why I'm telling people, do not underestimate and take him deadly seriously, like a heart attack. And in Florida, here's the thing in Florida that people have to realize that Ron DeSantis won by 19 points against Charlie Crist. But the Democratic Party severely underfunded the fight in Florida. They did not give enough money to Florida. They put up Charlie Crist, who, bless him, but he had lost several times before and he didn't inspire people to come out and vote. And there were these voter suppression tactics, including an election police that arrested African Americans high profile on TV and scared people out of voting. If you take all that into consideration, it's not surprising he won by that much. Now, if the Democrats invest in Florida again, I don't know how the hell they don't do that in a state that big. They need to. When we come out strong and we have this time we have candidates that can inspire more, I think we'll do much better. And I think that Ron DeSantis looks stronger than he is in the terms of the numbers of his last re-election. And Scott, you're right. If people would have known he was going to be as extreme as he is now, I think he would have lost a lot of votes, particularly with the business community. We see what he's doing with Disney. And I think that's scaring a lot of conservatives. I mean, what kind of a conservative goes after businesses like this? Disney just canceled, because of him, Disney just canceled a plan to build a campus on Lake Nona Town Center in Orlando. It's going to cost the state $1 billion. 2,000 Disney jobs, and each one of those jobs is an average of $120,000 salary. That's a lot of money going around. He went after the Special Olympics, for God's sakes, because they said that they wanted people to wear masks. They protect people with Down syndrome. He didn't care if they died, but he went after that business. He went after the Tampa Bay Rays because they put out a statement after the shooting in Uvalde, Texas, that killed 19 school children. And DeSantis was so angry, he lurched off into a tirade and blocked state money from a new Tampa Bay Rays training facility. He went after the Orlando Philharmonic Plaza and threatened to pull their liquor license because they had a drag show, because DeSantis is going after drag, falsely labeling these innocuous shows live adult entertainment, even though they have nothing to do with live adult entertainment. It's a lie. And so I think a lot of people, especially in the business community, more moderate Republicans, would take pause, knowing that he was going to go that far to the right. And in fact, that has been the case. There have been top donors in Florida, including the second richest man in Florida, that have said, I'm not backing this guy. He's too extreme with his censorship. He's too extreme with this abortion thing. And so there are some people who have said, this is the guy I thought he was. This guy, we thought he was the answer to Trump because he was less extreme. in some ways, he's more extreme.
Yeah. Wayne, we are completely out of time. I will tell you and our viewers tonight that we will continue to update them as you continue to update this brand new website, because I think it's critical, not just every Democrat that needs to see this, but every thinking person. And because we are at a perilous time in this country where every vote is going to matter, every decision is going to matter, because we are on a trajectory with some of these nut jobs to destroy this experiment in democracy. And we can't let that happen. And so I applaud you for standing up now, making this decision to pour all of these resources into it that you have. And I'm anxious to see the site tomorrow. But as I said, we're going to keep talking about this over the next several months. And I'm going to ask you to promise us to come back with an update in the next few months, because we need to hear your voice, Wayne.
And likewise, Scott, you're doing so much for this party, the Democratic Party, and the country. And you're also in a very tough state that needs people to stand up and speak out and move this country forward, because these Republicans are dragging it backward, and we cannot let that happen.
Yeah. Well, thanks again, my friend. Great to see you as always. And you are a great source of enlightenment, and always a joy to have you here. And I'll look forward to talking to you real soon.
Thank you.
Wow, there's a lot in that. And I can't urge you enough to go to DicRon.com tomorrow and throughout this cycle, because it will continue to be updated. And we need to know the truth about someone who has done horrible things in his state and will do the same thing for this country.